Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1, where we challenge the assumptions of our current society to resist depression and investigate alternative ways of living, for a world based on justice, solidarity and sustainability. Welcome to the Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, your local community radio station. My name is Andy and I will be with you for the next hour, and we are broadcasting on Yagara and Turrbal country. And today on the show, well, it is the season, as they say. In more than one religion, it is a season of festivities coming up, although as ever, these things bring up a complex array of different feelings in different people and are celebrated in different ways, and they can mean a lot of different things. And today on the show, we are going to be talking both Hanukkah and Christmas. We're covering all the religious festivities for this time of year. And it is quite a complex time to be talking about. Of course, I don't need to tell you what happened at Bondi on the weekend at a Hanukkah celebration. And so what is normally a time of great celebration for Jewish people, as we will hear, is one at the moment of mourning and grief, but also of a quite complex political situation that people have to live through in the midst of their grief, as we will hear. I spoke to Ed Carroll, who is a local Jewish activist, about what Hanukkah means in general, what Hanukkah means for him, and also, I guess, what it means in the current context following such a shocking and terrible event on the weekend, how these rituals can bring solace, or what they do bring in that situation. In the second half of the show, we will be speaking, as we have the last couple of years, actually to Usama Nicola, who is in Bethlehem, the home of Christmas for so many people, I guess, if they engage at all with the traditional kind of Christmas story, which does take place in Bethlehem. Because most of the time, most of our Christmases now are of a different kind of mythology and culture that's based around Santa Claus and consumerism and advertising. But if they engage with that story, Bethlehem probably just seems like this mythological place that exists in a story. But it is, of course, a real place, and people still live there. And some of the struggles in that story are still going on, or there are parallel struggles for people in Bethlehem. So we will hear from Usama about what it's like in Christmas in the occupied West Bank in Bethlehem in 2025. So that is what's coming up. Of course, there's sensitive topics, but I have tried to cover them in a sensitive way and get people who are not only deep thinkers about these things, but also people who are living these experiences on the ground in the places affected. And so I hope you'll enjoy the interviews with Ed and Usama, and we will start off with Ed Carroll.
My name is Ed. I'm a Jewish Australian and involved in a lot of anti-Zionist kind of organising and campaigning, particularly here in Meghanj and Brisbane.
Well, it is. We're currently in roughly the middle of Hanukkah. Is that right?
8 days is the main festival. So we're coming towards the end of it now.
Right. I guess let's start off with, what is the celebration of Hanukkah about?
Yeah, so Hanukkah is one of the older celebrations in the Jewish faith and in Jewish culture. The basics of the story is, thousands of years ago, Jews have occupied and been kicked out of the lands currently known as Palestine and Israel many times. And one particular time, it was occupied by the Greeks. And the Maccabees, the particular tribe, they fought a campaign against them and were eventually successful in attacking the Greeks and taking back over that land. And the way the story goes is that they were under siege, and they had one night left of oil for their candles, and so they lit it, and then over the course of 8 nights, that oil just kept burning. And so it was very much considered a miracle for the Maccabees, and it gave them the light and the strength that they were able to see through their campaign at the time and take back. I believe Jerusalem was the main target, as it usually is, but they were successful in their campaign, and it's due to that faith that they had and the kind of the miracle of the one day of oil turning into 8 days of light that gave them that strength.
So that's how it started, but I guess there's 2,200 years of tradition, and since then that this ritual sort of takes on all kinds of meanings. And so I wonder, for you personally, in 2025, what does Hanukkah mean? Yeah, so it's
it means something slightly different for everyone, but for myself, I didn't grow up in shul or in going to synagogue on a regular basis. So for me, it was mostly just the cultural thing. And many of my friends that did grow up in the faith, we talk about it, and all of us will agree Hanukkah is one of the most favourite and deeply held and enjoyed celebrations in the Jewish calendar. It's partly because it does happen to come around the same time of year as Christmas. There are a lot of parallels drawn against that naturally, but it is essentially our Christmas. It's a very joyous celebration. There's 8 nights of singing and dancing and eating and giving gifts, and particularly for a kid, there's nothing better than 8 days of getting good food and presents. So
take that, Christians. You only get one day.
So the cultural significance of the meaning behind it, that can change and shift over the years of how much the victory of the Maccabees can mean to you, but the coming together and the celebration and the warmth and positivity that you have in the community is one of the main takeaways that we have across the board, and almost everyone in the Jewish community would agree with that.
It's interesting, these religious symbols and rituals, their meaning can often be multiple things, and sometimes they're sort of contested. And within the Christmas celebration, you can see this between, I guess, the spiritual kind of thing and the consumer capitalist interpretation of Christmas, these contested sort of meanings. And I suppose it's interesting, within Judaism, I wonder about Hanukkah, whether it sort of can mean different things to different people, and whether they sometimes come into conflict or anything like that.
Yeah, anything can be open to interpretation. The one thing that I find, there's more of an emphasis on the coming together as a community than the commercialism. That it's not like Christmas where it's this one big day where you have to get the biggest presents, and Coca-Cola doesn't sponsor Hanukkah at all. So we don't have that commercialist influence. It really is that coming together, that enjoying each other. One of the main kind of secular takeaways, I would say, would be a lot of the messaging is around what we'd say is finding the light. So, the whole entire story of Hanukkah is about the light of the candles going for the 8 days. That gets expanded a lot, particularly as you get older, and it's not so much about the food and the presents. It becomes more about understanding the message as a whole. That message of inner peace and sharing and giving and finding the light, whatever that means to you, comes a lot more to the forefront for a lot of us, and that's a very positive message. Unfortunately, in Jewish history, we don't have a lot of positives. Not even talking about modern history, just the entire history of the Jewish people. A lot of our culture and our ceremonies and our holy days and festivals come from a place of pain as opposed to a place of joy. So, festivals like Yom Kippur, they're a lot more, I wouldn't say dark, but they're a lot more serious. There's a lot more preaching about the stories involved and the pain that we've gone through as a people. So it just doesn't have that lightness that Hanukkah gives. So it's a lot more special that way.
Well, I guess speaking of grief and pain, it's been a crazy week for Jewish people in this country, and I wonder if you can share with us what does a ritual like Hanukkah offer in a space of grief and really complex kind of feelings like this?
It's very, very difficult. Hanukkah being such a happy time, such a time of celebration for most of us, it's very difficult that, particularly in Australia, but we know that this has been felt all around the world. It is a time of darkness at the moment for this tragedy. And for the last couple of years, certainly with the genocide in Gaza, we've seen the conversations around Jewish identity become a lot more deep and a lot more complex. This certainly adds to that complexity. We have a lot of the politicization of outside of Hanukkah and outside of the Jewish community, and trying to take advantage of what's happened for Zionist purposes as opposed to Jewish purposes, makes a lot of the conversations a lot more dark and a lot more difficult to have. For me personally, I am an anti-Zionist Jew. The last 2 years has been quite difficult. There's been a lot of conversations that have been had around, the identity of what it means to be Jewish. That has been very, very difficult in the last week or so. On the one hand, we are mourning like anyone else. I had family members in Bondi on the day. Thankfully, they had left the event before it happened. But I have to reconcile that and the pain and the grief of having family members directly attached to what happened in Bondi, to them then certain actors trying to turn around and use it for political point scoring. It's very cheap, and it's not very nice at all.
Okay. Now, you've said that you are an anti-Zionist Jew, and you've been active in that space for the last couple of years, and I guess it's been a really complicated week, the rhetoric around it, but I wonder if you can share how you reconcile the pain of this week with, I guess, the way that you have campaigned against occupation in the Holy Land.
Yeah. Well, the Israeli occupation and genocides that they're perpetuating in Gaza has made a lot of the conversations around Jewish grief, particularly in the last week, very difficult to have and very nuanced. A lot of the main point that we make as anti-Zionist Jews is that we, as a Jewish people, are not exceptional from any other form of religion, of race, of ethnicity, whatever it may be, and that our grief isn't more than anyone else's. Our hatred or hatred of us isn't exceptional compared to anyone else's. And in the campaigning that I've been doing ever since I first started speaking up for Palestine as a Jewish person, a lot of the conversations that we see are around trying to break that nexus between Zionism and Judaism, because we don't see them as the same. And the grief around what happened in Bondi last week as an anti-Zionist Jew it can be a lot more complex to try and go through, and it has been quite complex for me to deal with, because on the one hand we've seen all these Zionist Jewish voices in the media and campaigning across the country trying to say, well, this Jewish grief is Israeli grief, and that's simply not the true across the board. We have to break that nexus. And there's been this big kind of cultural argument in the Jewish community and in between anti-Zionist and Zionist Jews of where that exceptionalism sits. I find in the last week that has been very, very pronounced. We've seen the plan for anti-Semitism that was put forward by Gillian Siegel, the anti-Semitism envoy for Australia. It is a very hardcore pro-Zionist plan that centres the criticisms of Israel and describing that as anti-Semitism. And it's a very dangerous thing to do. And we've been having to try and deal with that and the fallout of that whilst negotiating our own grief of the fact that Jews have been targeted. It's not about Zionism. It's Jews and Hanukkah that have been targeted by this attack at Bondi, and we need to separate those two issues in order to be able to grieve properly. It's not an easy thing to do at the moment, because all the mainstream, the big voices that are getting into the media, both Jewish Zionists and then Christian Zionists and others, they are not pushing that. They are pushing, this is our chance to shut down any criticism of Israel, and this is what we're going to go for. So we don't have the space to grieve because we're too busy having to turn around and fight that at the same time. It's a big challenge for a lot of us. It's a very difficult thing to try and grasp.
Well, I guess to finish on a slightly more positive note, for most Australians, Hanukkah is maybe not something on our radar, but probably more this week than ever. And so I wonder, for the average person who's not Jewish, if they were going to take one thing out of the Hanukkah celebration being on now, what should that be?
The biggest thing for Hanukkah is finding a light, as I said before. So, if there is a way for you to reflect, it could be the quite literally lighting a candle and having a moment of reflection. The vigils that we've seen all around Australia are a testament to that. Every single one that I've seen has had a candle lighting ceremony and a reflective moment that's kind of directly related to that. Letting in the light in more of a spiritual or reflective sense is a lot of what about Hanukkah is all about. So if you want to take that moment, just have a bit of reflection, see what positives you can find, what light you can find in the world, and let that in, as opposed to letting all of the darkness that we see. I feel like that would be the best message that Hanukkah could bring to people.
All right, thanks very much, Ed, for chatting with us today.
That's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Andy.
Here on The Paradigm Shift on 4ZZZ, we were speaking with Ed Carroll, who is a local Jewish person and somebody who's active in the space of trying to create a distinction between the freedom of religion and the freedom for every person to be able to exercise their beliefs and not be in fear for doing that, but also the freedom for people to live in their land without being driven out of it or, oppressed or kept under an apartheid system. All of these things, they seem simple, but we live in a complicated world where some of these basic things are sometimes hard to get. But yes, if any Jewish people are listening, happy Hanukkah. I hope that celebration can be providing some solace and joy for people who are experiencing very complex emotions and suffering much grief at this time. Another religious celebration that happens around this time of year is Christmas, and this one's harder to avoid because Christmas these days is largely a festival of advertising as well as a religious celebration. But it is worth remembering, and in a place where I think that kind of consumer capitalist culture so often disconnects us from any kind of grounding in any older traditions or any older sense of what it means to live well, to be part of a community, that we're constantly being told that we need new things, more, better, that it's worth trying to hold on to some of the cultural traditions that we share with other people around us. And of course, in Australia, one of those is Christmas. It is a tradition that transcends its kind of religious origins to be something that so many people across Australia celebrate in different ways. And it's based on this story that is quite a remarkable story originally of a couple forced into circumstances that nobody would want, particularly in a time of childbirth, of being far from home and without any shelter and stuck in an animal stables, and having a baby there that, of course, brings joy like, so many babies born do, no matter what the circumstances, and but then of being forced to run from a tyrannical ruler, and all of this this story about I guess the hope of the world is sometimes found not in the places where attention is so often focused in the important people and the powerful people, but it's far from those spaces where hope is to be found sometimes. And so that's the Christmas story that we have, and somehow it gets translated into whatever it is that you've seen advertised, whatever random products and sales and, cheesy, kitschy, plastic things. But still, amongst all of that is this story. And central to it is Bethlehem, this town. And Bethlehem is not just a place in that story, it is a place where people live. And amazingly, much like in that story, it is a place that is occupied by a foreign power that sort of controls where people can move, and so much more. And so I did cross to Bethlehem this week to speak to Usama Nicola, our regular Paradigm Shift correspondent in Bethlehem, to hear what Christmas is like there in 2025.
Hello, this is Usama Nicola from Bethlehem. I'm a father of 3 children. I live in Bethlehem. I work in the tourism industry, and it has been really hard to survive without tourism. And I'm glad to be with you today.
Yes, well, it is Christmas time, and so the world remembers Bethlehem, even if for many people it would just be a place in a story, not a real life place where people live. But it is the time of year when many people would talk of Bethlehem. And so what does it mean for you, Christmas time, living there in the home of Christmas?
Christmas has been always a message of hope, a message of no fear, a message of resilience. And I love the spirit of Christmas. As you know, in the past 2 years, the Christmas festivals, the celebrations, the lighting the tree, the Christmas market, the Christmas decoration in the streets were cancelled. This year Christmas is different than the past years, where we had just last Saturday a Christmas tree lighting festival where maybe at least 7,000 people were there, and people are eager and looking for any opportunity of joy and hope. So Christmas is a season of hope and joy and a clear message of no fear.
Yes, it's interesting, the Christmas story, and it's so easy to forget it in Australia, because Christmas is so much about Santa Claus and tree decorations and gifts and all these kind of things. But the Christmas story is a complex one. It is a story of hope and joy, but it is also a story of struggle and oppression, that original Christmas story, isn't it?
That's true, As always we say, sometimes we make jokes and say we made a mistake 2000 years ago when we say there is no place in the inn. So the King of the Kings was born in a very humble place, which used to be the stable, under a cave under the inn. And later on, when the Magi came to the birthplace following the star that appears in the Christmas story in the Bible, we know that they met Herod, who represent the dictator, and then he wanna know where the baby is, not because he wanna come and pay homage or give a gift, because he wanna come and kill this newborn king. And then we know that the wise men has took a different road, and this means a lot. Sometimes whenever something happens, we need to stand in front of it, read it, reflect over it, and then change our direction, change the way. And unfortunately later the innocent children of Bethlehem has paid the price, and Jesus became a refugee with his family and left all the way to Egypt. So the Christmas story is full of joy for the newborn baby, for the new king, and it has also challenges because of and sorrow because of the innocent children of Bethlehem, because of Holy Family flight to Egypt, and all these challenges. And the situation is still the same, where there is a lot of families and children still suffer and still live the hard and harsh reality.
Yes, certainly in Gaza there's been so many children die in the last few years as well, and there's been lots of cost and lots of trauma to that invasion, that war, but I think one of the most notable things is the death of children. Is that an element of that story that really feels very relevant?
This didn't end. Unfortunately, there is a ceasefire, but the war really didn't end. In Gaza, the death is ongoing every day. There is still some attacks and shelling, against Gaza. There is a total number of 71,500 martyrs in general, and among them there is at least 19,000 children and 12,500 women. And this is ongoing. Even in the West Bank we had almost 210 children killed in the past 2 years. But also in Gaza, just in the couple days, 14 people were died. It's because of the weather. People live in tent, and there has been, we are in winter, and 14 people were died because of cold, and because of also buildings collapsing. 6 members of family, father and mother, and children. I think one out of 6 members of their family didn't die in the recent collapse of buildings in Gaza. And you talk almost about 5,000 children and women are lost, whether under rubble or they don't know where they are. So the suffer is ongoing, and again it's winter, and the tents that people have in Gaza is not a good shelter for them during this cold weather, and it's very hard for them to survive in these tents with all this flooding. So I was coming back home just half hour ago, and a shower of rain started, and I was immediately thinking about children and women and everyone who live in Gaza during this cold weather. I am inside my room and I feel cold, and I feel this winter is going to be very hard and create a new kind of catastrophe on the people of Gaza.
Yes, thinking of the Christmas story, I guess there's the family forced into a stable because there's no place in the buildings, and I guess the other side of suffering that situation is the aid, which is supposed to have been let in under the Trump peace plan. What's the situation with aid going into there?
Unfortunately, situation is still complicated, and there isn't enough aid, and there isn't also enough medicine. Like some surgeries are done without enough equipment or medicine, which make it harder and more painful. And I think it's time to start the second phase of what they call the peace project or the peace plan or the agreement. The situation is very hard and complicated, and what is really funny and painful in the same time that the new version of iPhone were able to enter Gaza, and food and medicine were not able. And it's really strange whether it's the military has allowed it to enter, or some news say it was being smuggled. I don't know how anything can be smuggled to Gaza these days. But it's really painful to see that iPhone 17 have been allowed into Gaza, and the main food or medicine or oil or gas for heat and a generator were not allowed. So still people are in need of many things.
Is there much communication with coming out of Gaza now, with it sort of a little bit more stable there? For you in the West Bank, are people able to hear from people in Gaza, communicate with them?
Yes, people still can communicate whenever they are able to charge their mobiles, short message or short talk, so people are still able to communicate. But still, it's the worst situation. Gaza is no longer a place that's easy to live there, with no resources, no food, no clean water, with a lot of trash and rubble, and this will cause more viruses and diseases, and don't forget that 55% of Gaza is under full Israeli military control and presence, and no Palestinian is there, so they have been squeezed more towards the west and in small different areas, and still there is shelling and killing and shootings every single day, and every single day there is people who die from cold and from lack of food and lack of medicine.
Now that's in Gaza, where I guess the world's eyes have been paying attention, and where this peace plan has been worked out. But what about in the West Bank? The conflict there has never stopped, even while it's been going on in Gaza. What's the situation like where you are and in other parts of the West Bank at the moment?
The situation is still very serious and very hard and very complicated in the West Bank. The checkpoints and the restricted of movement is still complicated and hard. Checkpoints will be closed, gates will be closed. Yesterday I took my father to do a surgery in his eye in a hospital in Hebron. Hebron is just south of Bethlehem, around 27 kilometers out of Bethlehem. It's around 40 minutes drive. So the first gate, when I arrived, the north gate was closed, the east gate was closed, so I drive to find a gate to go into, and we were late for our appointment in the hospital. And to be frank, we were lucky that when we finished surgery, we waited a little bit and then we left. The checkpoint was crowded, but thanks God we left. And then when I arrived in Bethlehem, before I arrived home, my wife called me and she say, "Are you out of Hebron or not yet?" I tell her we are almost in Bethlehem. She say, "Thanks God they closed the last gate that was open. Otherwise we stayed there for late night, or I don't know, I didn't follow up with the news to see if it's open or not." Another element is the settler violence. Settler violence didn't stop. Everywhere in the West Bank, every city, around Bethlehem and not far from where I live, from my roof, I can see one of the outposts that, if not daily, twice or three times a week, they have settler violence to the surrounded areas. So, and that's not far from where I live. We try to avoid the moving out of Bethlehem just for necessary things. So settler violence in bypass roads, settler violence around the villages, settler violence around the settlements. So settler violence didn't stop, from 5 to 10 attacks every single day. And demolition orders. Just yesterday, the Israeli military ordered another 25 demolition order in Tul Karim Nur Shams refugee camp. They already demolished 1,400 buildings since this year, and they are going to demolish another 25 buildings. You don't talk about apartment, you talk about building that has several apartments. So displaced Palestinians in the upper West Bank is ongoing. Almost 30 Palestinian small communities in the east side has been evacuated. Also, the Israeli military start building a new wall in the northeast of the West Bank to separate the Palestinian communities from the wilderness, Jordan Valley. So confiscating land, building more settlements, settler violence, restricted of movement, lack of jobs. Unemployment is very high, especially in Bethlehem, which depends on tourism and tourist-related businesses.
In the middle of all of that is this season that's supposed to be about hope of Christmas. What are the things bringing you hope and the people around you in Bethlehem?
We will never lose up hope. To see a child with a smile is giving us hope. To receive a message from friends to ask about how we are and what we are doing and how things are is giving us hope. To wake up in the morning and to have a new day is giving us hope. Our faith is our hope. So despite all the challenges, seeing Bethlehem decorated with a Christmas tree and some lights, and some visitors are coming to see the festivals and the celebration, despite all the challenges, this gives us a hope. So despite everything, we try not to lose hope. Many people already lost hope and they have left the country. And especially when you talk about the Christian community in Bethlehem, almost 5% or more of the Christian community in Bethlehem has left. You talk about many families, you talk about many individuals who left to Spain, to America, different parts of the world. And every young man or woman you talk with, they say, we want to leave. We refuse to lose hope, but there is a lot of challenges and there is a lot of difficulties. Again, our faith is one of the main source of our hope. Our friends, people who care, people who support, people who stay in solidarity are also our source of hope.
Yes, well, I want to just finally, Usama, I guess there's this Christmas story that so many people in Australia would have heard many times and not think about, and including this town of Bethlehem. But I wonder, for you in 2025, are there any things about this story that are particularly relevant for you?
The whole story of Christmas is to remember us to not forget the needed people. People who need our care, people who need our support, people who need to listen a good and nice word from us, a word of encouragement, the people who really need the transformation, the marginalized people, the sick people, the poor people, the wounded people. So, we need to look at these people and find them and communicate with them and give them a hug, warm hug, warm words and encouragement words and support words, and just help them as much as we can. So the Christmas message is Christmas to think of the others, people who are in need, who are in suffer, who are facing difficulties and hardship. So that's the most important message for Christmas.
Okay, well, thank you, Usama, for speaking with us again.
It's my pleasure, my brother, and I wish you and wish everyone who's listening to this message a joyful celebration and blessed season. And I pray and hope that next year, which is very soon, things will be better, not only for us in Palestine, but for every human being around the world, where there is more justice and there is more acceptance and there is more respect and love and no hatred and no revenge and no violence.
You are listening to 4ZZZ, The Paradigm Shift is the show. We were speaking to Usama Nicola, who is a Palestinian man living in Bethlehem, home of the Christmas story, and currently in the occupied West Bank in Palestine. And yes, as we mark Hanukkah and Christmas in a time, it's been a week of horrifying violence, of course, but it's also been a couple of years of horrifying violence in another part of the world. And in fact, you know, if we look around us, it never stops. You know, the trail of violence and hatred and, you know, oppression of people through whatever means and for whatever reason. And yeah, we do need things that can inspire us to hope and inspire us to action as well. And I hope for a lot of people, the Christmas story might be that, and the Hanukkah story the same, and the rituals around it, gathering together with people that we love and taking time out from our daily busyness and the distractions, you know, of normal life. Those things all are useful things as well, and humanity has found them useful over, you know, the previous millennia that people have been celebrating these events. And so I hope that you can take the time as we come into this like holiday season to do some of that. And of course as well, it comes at the end of the year, which means that it is a ripe time for reflection once we have this time out from all of our normal work and other schedules, that we get this time to look back at the year that's just been and think ahead of the year to come, and of course the years to come. You know, when we think about what kind of world do we want to live in, what kind of life do we want to live, and how can we get from where we are now to that place that we dream of. And so don't miss the chance to have a bit of reflection time, think about the things that really matter, and talk to the people who you care about. Sometimes Christmas means talking to the people who you wouldn't necessarily choose to hang out with, but you're there in the same space with them. But, you know, that can be a good thing too, a chance to practice a bit of empathy, see the world through somebody else's eyes, and practice some non-violent resolution of conflict, which is something that this world so sorely needs as we look around us. And so whatever your holidays look like, I hope it is a restful time but also a fruitful time. And of course, Paradigm Shift will keep going in 2026 and keep on trying to bring you the stories that matter, people who are thinking about the world in ways of how we can make it better, and people who are out there acting on it, trying to bring it into being. And there's so many of them out there, and thank you to everybody who has been on the Paradigm Shift over the previous year. There's so many amazing people who have volunteered their time to be interviewed on this show, and yeah, it's a real blessing to be able to have those conversations and bring them to other people as well. And so I hope that you have enjoyed tuning in over the year gone by, and yeah, we'll keep doing it next year, and I will see you next Friday.